Welcome to True Crime Bites, Death Row and Executions, where we honor lives lost and revisit the final chapters of those who crossed the line. In just days, Kayle Barrington Bates will be strapped to a gurney inside Florida State Prison. After more than 40 years of appeals, mistrials, and legal delays, the state is finally set to carry out his death sentence for a murder that shattered a quiet Florida community in 1982. But with lingering questions about juror misconduct, ineffective counsel, and a decades-long fight for second chances, many are asking, is this justice served or justice that took far too long? On June 14, 1982, 24-year-old Janet Renee White returned to her State Farm insurance office in Lynn Haven, Bay County, Florida, after having lunch with her husband.
The worst day ever, and it's still the worst day ever. Her favorite thing to do at lunch every day was to watch Days of Our Lives, 12 to 1. You didn't miss it. So naturally, I fix her a sandwich and she's sitting there watching Days of Our Lives. I follow her back to her office. I'm right behind her, and she blew the horn at me, and I blew the horn, and she pulled on into the office. Little did I know that there was someone in the office waiting on her.
Posing as a delivery man for a Tallahassee paper company, having previously made at least one legitimate delivery to that same office, Kayle Barrington Bates ambushed her as she came back inside. He dragged her into the wooded area behind the building, attempted to sexually assault her, then beat, strangled, and stabbed her to death. Investigators documented around 30 contusions, abrasions, and lacerations on her body. He tore a diamond ring from her finger, and that ring was later found in his pocket. At the crime scene, Bates was discovered wearing the victim's blood. Investigators collected fibers matching his pants, his knife case and hat, a watch pin consistent with his watch. Bates gave inconsistent confessions throughout the investigation, which only helped the prosecution. Although the evidence was overwhelming, Bates himself came from a background that didn't predict violence. He had no prior criminal record, a fact even the court recognized as a mitigating circumstance. At the time of his arrest, he was 24 years old, just a few months older than Janet. Witnesses later described him as quiet and emotionally troubled. It's hard not to wonder, what happened in the space between being a quiet young man and becoming a convicted killer? Janet White was known around Lynn Haven as a warm, dedicated professional with a promising future in the insurance field. Her life was abruptly ended in a violent, premeditated attack. I imagine the shock rippling through a small community, sudden grief in her family, disbelief among friends, and fear among coworkers.
Over and over, where's Renee? What's going on? And I'll never forget, he looked at me and he said, I have no easy way to say this to you, but Renee's been murdered. And you've got to go down to the sheriff's station and you've got to identify some things for us.
Her death was not only a personal tragedy, but a public one, corrupting a place of work and safety into a scene of horror. The emotional pressure surrounding the trial was intense. Bates's defense team had asked for a change of venue, arguing that the local publicity and public outrage had made it impossible to seat an impartial jury in Bay County. That request was denied. What's more, the trial began with the judge inviting the victim's own minister to open with a prayer, asking the jury to be guided by wisdom and truth. While meant to offer clarity, it blurred the line between courtroom neutrality and communal grief. It's moments like this that make you pause. When a community is grieving and the courtroom becomes a stage for collective mourning, can fairness truly survive? In January 1983, a jury convicted Bates on charges of kidnapping, attempted sexual battery, armed robbery, and first-degree murder. They recommended the death penalty by an 11-to-1 vote, And in March of that year, the court sentenced him to die. On direct appeal, the Florida Supreme Court upheld Bates's convictions, but vacated his death sentence due to improperly applied aggravating factors. The court sent the case back for a new sentencing hearing. In 1987, following a resentencing, Bates was again condemned to death, and this time the High Court affirmed the sentence. In 1989, then-Governor Bob Martinez signed Bates's first death warrant, but the trial court issued a stay of execution after finding that Bates's defense attorney during the penalty phase had been ineffective. That decision, too, was affirmed. As a result, Bates received yet another chance at resentencing. The first resentencing in 1995 ended in a mistrial. A second resentencing was held that same year, resulting in a 9-3 jury recommendation for death. The trial judge imposed the sentence, and the Florida Supreme Court affirmed it again in 1999. Bates also filed a habeas corpus petition, challenging the jury selection process and other trial issues, but it was ultimately denied. Decades after his original conviction, Bates filed a post-conviction motion seeking permission to interview a juror from his 1983 trial. He claimed he had learned that the juror was a second cousin to someone who had married the victim's sister. Under Florida Rule of Criminal Procedure 3.575, such motions must be filed within 10 days of the verdict unless the defendant can show good cause for a delay. Bates did not specify when or how he learned this information. The court ruled that he had failed to demonstrate good cause for the nearly 40-year delay, and his motion was denied. The Florida Supreme Court agreed, emphasizing the importance of timeliness in post-conviction proceedings. On June 30th, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case, closing the door on federal review. On July 19, 2025, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed Bates's latest death warrant. Bates, now 67 years old, is scheduled to be executed by lethal injection on August 19, 2025, at Florida State Prison. This will mark the 10th execution in Florida this year, making 2025 the state's busiest execution year in over a decade. Bates's attorney, James Driscoll Jr., has indicated that further legal efforts will be made, citing unresolved constitutional questions and procedural concerns. But so far, no court has granted relief. I'm struck by the sheer weight of time, more than 4 decades of litigation, and still we arrive at this moment. It's impossible not to feel for Janet White, a life full of promise ripped away in a moment of violence. On the other hand, the legal process pushed forward again and again, applying rules such as the 10-day filing limit under Rule 3.575 that now seal the fate of a man. Does strict procedure sharpen justice or prolong it into something hollow? This story is filled with the tension between swift justice and justice delayed. The evidence against Bates was overwhelming, and Janet's loss is a wound that never healed. Yet the path to his execution has been drawn out by the complexities of capital punishment law. With the clock now ticking down to August 19th, 2025, the final chapter of this case may finally be written. But for some, the question still lingers. Did justice come too late? Thank you for watching. If this story moved you or made you think, please consider giving it a like and subscribing for more true crime cases that reveal the darkest corners of justice and humanity. Leave a comment below. Do you think justice was served in this case, or did it come too late? Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.